Welcome, friends, to Inks and Issues, a podcast where we do in-depth discussions on a single comic book. I'm your host, Jonah Gregory, and with me, as always, my co-host, Kieran Bennett.
Hi, my name's Kieran, and honestly, at the moment, I can't think of a funny intro because I just had the B-52 stuck in my head for the last, 2 weeks.
Yeah, you brought this up pre-show, and I'm still baffled by this, but let's not get too into that before we introduce our special guest this week, which is our editor, Logan Pawley. Welcome to the show.
What?
Logan Pawley, age 26, rating awesome. How's it going, guys?
Hell yeah.
Hey,
good.
Hey.
That's what they do in the book.
It's from the book. It's a callback.
Yeah. So we're doing Scott-Pilgrim this episode. Well, this is part 1. It's 6 volumes, so there's no way we're going to cram all of that into one episode.
Yeah, because you guys are cowards.
Well,
I was like, let's do a 4-hour episode. And you guys were like, no. Who would listen to that?
Every episode, Jonah says it's an in-depth discussion. Okay, so
yeah,
we gotta get deep in there.
Yeah,
I have 900 pages of notes screaming to be released upon the internet.
Fancy. So before we get into that, though, Logan, you're new to the show and you picked this book, but it makes me need to ask the question I always ask, which is, what got you into comics? Or are you even into comics?
No,
that's an assumption on my part.
I hate them. That's why, when you asked me to edit the show, I was like, I suppose. No, yeah. I started off reading just normal novels and that kind of thing. My parents didn't have any sort of investment in thinking that graphic novels or comics were worth anything. And it was only when I got my first library card. I know, right?
I mean, no, your parents were correct.
Hey.
Yeah, but, so it was when I got my first library card, went to the library and saw the teen section, and it was full of stuff like the Ultimates, which was my introduction to the Avengers, which was very confusing. All sorts of Spider-Man and X-Men kind of stuff as well. So basically, I have read random collections from random series, and I have no idea what the actual canon is, but I love it. So,
hell yeah.
Comics are weird, man.
Is there a standout that kept you reading in that, like a character or story arc or anything that really caught you?
Well, I was always a big fan of X-Men, especially Wolverine stories, because, Logan, so...
Well, that's fair.
Writes itself. But I've always been a Spider-Man fan as well, so... I'll pick up any random thing that's got Spider-Man in it or Wolverine.
Well, if you're looking for some Spider-Man, we recently read something called One More Day, which was, that's Spider-Man.
Yeah. That was highly recommended, wasn't it? You guys said it was amazing, if I remember correctly.
I'm in a lot of pain right now.
I don't listen to the show. I just edit it.
Well, that's fair.
If you've ever been thinking, wow, I really want to see what Spider-Man looks like if his ass was a sack of potatoes, One More Day is for you.
Yeah.
I have to say, the interesting thing about listening to the show is that I don't read the comic as well, generally. While if you mention something really interesting while I'm editing, I'll Google it and go, okay, that's odd. So, with The Long Halloween and also with Uzumaki, it was imagination versus reality, which was an interesting experience. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Uzumaki and just Junji Ito art. That's the one book I had to even tell the kids, because Cora loves comics, and I was like, don't even open this book because you will have nightmares, because she's very susceptible to scary stuff.
That is fair. That is very fair.
Yeah. And she, as far as I know, has heeded my warning, because I haven't had her wake up screaming and telling me she peeked into the forbidden book. So
she's not suddenly scared of snails or spirals, that kind of thing.
Right.
And she also hasn't taken up just standing at the foot of your bed and just saying, Dad, there are spirals in my ear.
I have had her, I have woken up with her just standing next to me on the side of the bed and in the middle of the night. And that scared the crap out of me, because she was like, I had a bad dream, but I didn't want to wake you up. So I'm like, so you were just going to stand there all night?
And now you're going to have a bad dream, Father.
Yeah, I mean,
I've passed it
that's
to
how
you.
It goes. So, did you was Scott-Pilgrim something you gravitated towards because of the like game stuff, or was it someone recommended it to you? I was curious, like what brought you to it in particular.
So because of the game stuff, I had heard, like, I was reading comments on something and it mentioned Scott Pilgrim, and then that was around the time that the movie was actually in production.
Oh, okay.
And I'm a big Edgar Wright fan, so I was like, okay, well, I know that I will be absolutely into this. So sure. I picked up the graphic novel, and it was around the time when I think it was the last volume or the last 2 volumes weren't out yet. And so,
okay.
Yeah, which was really interesting. So I delved into that in a time where I just left high school. And so I was no longer dating high schoolers. And I don't know, I was in that transitionary period in life, which, you know, it sort of made the whole thing speak to me in an interesting way. But hopefully I'm not as much of a douchebag as, you know, Scott Pilgrim is.
Yeah.
Or at least I hope I wasn't at the time.
Right. That's what we all hope looking back.
Yeah. So I got drawn in by
better than Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
I got drawn in by the geekiness and the gaming stuff, and then I found, I don't know, a fairly interesting coming of age story, you know?
All right. Cool. All right. So before we jump in, I need to ask Kieran, did you get a chance to read anything interesting before we did this?
No, funny you should actually ask me that question, Jonah, because you very rarely do, which I find quite considerate. But
I know. I'm funny just you should out of nowhere.
I know. Funny you should ask it this week. The short answer is no, not really. I haven't been really reading anything interesting. But I did take the time yesterday to pull out all my comic boxes and reorganize all of my comics.
Wow.
And if anyone would like a big paper bag full of like maybe 200 comics, I've got it, and I'll give it to you like for free. Yeah, Logan, you're putting up your hand.
Yeah,
you can have it.
I'll edit this out. It's mine.
You can have it.
Cheers.
So I culled my collection somewhat yesterday. So I think I now only have like maybe 2,000 comics.
Only. Yeah, cutting way back.
I know. So I don't really know what the point of that story was, but, you know, maybe go through your comics and decide, I'm never going to read this ever again. Or this is really bad and I don't actually need to keep it. So
you're saying Logan's got some pretty good stuff to look forward to.
He's got some hot items coming his way. And he has random issues of Green Lantern headed his way as well.
Hell yeah.
That just reminded me, I saw someone post like a little video of their Halloween setup, and it was like the bowl of candy and then a box of comics that were separated by like teen and kid. So they had old like 90s era Spider-Man and Wolverine and stuff, and then like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and stuff for the kids. I was like, that is a good setup right there.
That is very cool.
When you mentioned 2,000 comics, I looked at my shelf and I saw the 3 that I own. They are Kick-Ass by Mark Miller, which, you know, I got because I like the movie. Doctor Who The Forgotten, which is a volume that actually has all 12 Doctors in it. I think it was just before Capaldi came out.
Okay.
Got the role is a better way of phrasing that. And the other one is Batman Hush. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hush is one that has a place in my heart. It's not perfect, but it is.
Oh, it is
very good for what it is. But there are a few parts where you're like, okay, I guess. Like,
yeah,
really weird flicks, but okay,
yeah.
Well, like the Riddler is one of my favorite Batman villains, so you know, that kind of drew me towards it. So yeah,
nice. That's fair. I actually took Kim's suggestion and got Junji Ito's Cat Diary from the library.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'm not very far, but it is very entertaining because it's wacky stories of like his wife bringing home 2 cats, basically telling him, oh, the family cat has to come with us because, you know, whatever, the family can't keep it or something. And then she ends up bringing home 2 cats because she's like, well, the one cat would be lonely if we only had him.
It's always the trap.
Yes, and then him going from being like, oh, that cat is cursed because it has like a skull pattern on its back. And then she'll be playing with it and he'll get absorbed by its cuteness and try and play with it. And the cats will like run away from him. And he's just like, oh, why doesn't it like me? And he's like heartbroken. But it has some amazing, like in his style of close-ups of like him making crazy faces and stuff when he's trying to get the cats to play with him and stuff. It's very funny. So yeah, Kim was right. It was very good. So, highly recommended. If you like Junji Ito's art but want something less scary, I guess that's your one outlet. So yeah. All right. So you guys want to get into it?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
so we are talking about Scott Pilgrim, and I always want to say Versus the World, but that's the movie. That's the name of the second volume only in this. So
yeah.
Kieran, do you have some fun facts for us?
Yes, I do actually have some fun facts for you this week. So Scott Pilgrim it was published between August 2004 and July 2010 by a Portland-based comic book publisher called Oni Press. And also written by Brian Lee O'Malley. I wasn't actually sure if we'd said that earlier.
No, we had not.
No, we had not. Oh, shit, my bad. So anyway, Scott Pilgrim consists of 6 volumes, which we will be covering over the next couple episodes. And as Jonah has said, there is also a movie adaptation known as Scott Pilgrim versus the World. There is also a video game, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game. Scott Pilgrim versus the animation, which played on Adult Swim to promote the movie coming out. And there was also a mobile comic, which was produced by HarperCollins and Robot Comics. And it was an app that like used movement and sound and vibration to make like a, experience.
One of those motion comics.
All
the kids are always talking about.
I know, with the millennials and stuff.
It's comics, right? But 4D.
Yeah, exactly. Now, an interesting little fun fact here. Okay, there's a couple here. One, Brian Lee O'Malley did pretty much the whole thing by himself, which I think is very impressive. In the last volume, he hired a couple assistants to help him out because it was much longer than the other ones, and also I think he kind of wanted to get it finished. And it was on a bit of a deadline with the movie coming out like just after the last volume, which is why they have 2 different endings, which is kind of interesting, but. He also said that the most difficult portion of the entire thing to write was the ending of the comic. Now, I found this very interesting. He deliberately did not consider writing the ending until he began writing Volume 5. And he intended for Volume 5 and 6 to be kind of one single story, with 5 being like the darkest hour and 6 being the redemption arc. So knowing that, it is actually kind of interesting to go back and look at the first 4 volumes and realize that he had not really considered, like, in a concrete way, what the ending was going to be.
Yeah.
Also, your final fun fact before we get into the breakdown, the font used in the comic is Swiss 721 bold condensed.
It is a pretty cool font. So that is a fun fact.
I have one that I know that the original edition being black and white was like a cost saving measure, but the re-releases, the hardcover color editions, were colored by an award-winning colorist, Nathan Fairbairn. And I actually met him at Emerald City Comic Con because his booth happened to be right near, and sounds dumb, but it was right near the restrooms, which when my kids need to use the bathroom, right? So we happened to walk by and I was like, oh, Scott Pilgrim. And so we started chatting and he let my kids like sit down at his booth and just chill for a while we chatted because they were tired and they're little kids. And he was super cool. And we talked for like an hour. That's awesome. He was like this. And I didn't even realize he was the colorist until we had been talking for like 15 minutes.
Hell yeah.
So super, super cool dude and a very good colorist. So, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. A little shout out to him, even though this is not the editions that we read, which was more, again, a cost saving measure because the color editions are very nice, but they are also way more expensive than the box set of the black and white editions, which is fair.
Are ridiculously priced here.
I would imagine, for New Zealand hardcover.
Also, Comixology, sort your shit out. Why can I not get Scott Pilgrim on your website?
Yeah, I didn't actually look into it. I'm like, is there any Oni Press stuff on there? I didn't actually think to check.
Yeah, true. Actually, that's a good point.
So anyway, that was my fun fact, was that the colorist was nice to me.
See, what I love, Jonah, is like whenever you tell stories of the comics people that you've met, you always sort of go, ooh, were they an asshole? And no, they're always lovely people. So
all the ones I've interacted
all the
with
ones
have
you've
been
met.
nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're taking the time to talk to me, who's some random dude. So that's, that's a good sign. Also, did either of you play the Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game?
I played the demo of it on my Xbox 360 back in the day.
Yeah, I feel like I've played the demo as well. Probably on a friend's Xbox 360, actually. Now that I think about
so my brother and I beat the entire game, and I am sad that it is not available anymore.
Well, that was going to be my fun fact, is that, because of music licensing issues, you cannot purchase Scott Pilgrim the game anymore.
Right.
Which
sucks.
Really?
And it was a download only, so it is just gone unless you already have it downloaded to your Xbox. Yeah.
That sucks, because I would love to play that one day.
It definitely sucks.
I don't think it ever came to PC either.
No, I was hoping it would get ported to Steam, because some of the other cool like Xbox Live Arcade games eventually came there, like Castle Crashers, but nope.
Oh yeah.
Nope. So that's gone. If you have a copy of that on your 360, never delete it. Yeah. Is my point.
Yeah, wow. According to Wikipedia, it was delisted on December the 30th, 2014, following the earlier delistings of Marvel vs. Capcom Origins and Uno.
No, not Uno.
I know.
Oh, man. See, it's interesting when that happens, like with Alan Wake got taken down as well.
Really?
Although it just got re-released.
Yeah,
but,
it just got relicensed. Whatever was holding it back got picked up again, so...
Yeah, it was like there was one song on the soundtrack that the licensing was too expensive and they were selling it copies for like $5 or $10, so it wasn't worth it for them to pay the royalties and keep selling it. Which is bizarre.
Yeah, that's...
wild.
All right,
let's
what
get
a nightmare,
into this. Let's get into this
recap.
All right, so... I guess I will kick us off with Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life, which is the name of Volume 1. So the series begins introducing us to Scott Pilgrim, who is a 23-year-old Canadian slacker living in Toronto with his roommate Wallace Wells. He is a bass player for a band called Sex Bomb, along with his friends Stephen Stills, who's the talent they keep saying, who is on guitar, and Kim Pine on the drums. He recently started dating a 17-year-old Chinese-Canadian high schooler named Knives Chow. Though his friends consider this somewhat scandalous due to her age, Scott doesn't see a problem because all they ever do is talk. Scott.
Oh my God.
Scott, can we sit down and talk to you here for a minute?
Scott, would you mind taking a seat?
Yeah. So his friends, so one night Scott is dreaming about this girl on rollerblades, who he's never seen before. So he just thinks it's some, random dream that he had. But later he sees her in real life and finds out her name is Ramona Flowers, who has a girl who recently moved from New York to Toronto. She's rumored to have had a messy breakup with a man named Gideon, who seems to be like some kind of mysterious figure. And it's revealed that she can travel through an alternate dimension called subspace. And that becomes kind of a weird plot thing, and is where a lot of people, I think, have a hard time jumping on because of the Mario 2 inspired portals that exist in this world.
It's interesting how unexplained that is, and I kind of tried to tie it together at the end, but I never really grasped it. It
doesn't super work when they try and tie it together, but also I kind of have to respect the fact that when Scott asks her, what the hell is subspace? How are you rollerblading through my mind? And she's like, oh, it's just subspace. Do you not have it here in Canada? We have it in America. But we never go to America in the series, so for all we know, fucking everybody's doing it in America.
Yeah. But she also has a purse that is a subspace portal. So it's basically like a bag of holding or whatever. So you can just
100% a bag of holding.
Yeah. Just an excuse for her to be able to pull out giant weapons, and occasionally they escape into it in the series. So, So Scott wants to meet her again because he's completely infatuated since she keeps going through his dreams.
She's the girl of his dreams.
Yeah, literally.
Ah!
So, hey. But he receives an ominous email from someone named Matthew Patel. But he doesn't really heed the warning. He just ignores the email as like, this is boring, and doesn't read it.
Yeah,
and the letters and stuff.
This is boring, and just deletes it.
Yeah. So yeah, he doesn't think anything of it. Sex Bomb is doing a Battle of the Bands type concert, and Matthew Patel descends upon the stage and reveals himself to be the first of Ramona's evil exes, who he's going to have to fight to date her.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, he has mystical powers, and they get into a big rumble, and
Why does he have mystical powers? Why does any of this happen?
He summons demon hipster chicks, and Scott rallies his friends together, and they basically have a battle inspired by Space Channel 5. And yeah, that's
okay. I didn't
so
know that
happens. And then the final attack obliterates Matthew, and he bursts into some coins, but it's not even enough to take the bus. So Scott is very disappointed that this man he just murdered isn't that turned into coins.
Okay, can we please talk about this for a second?
Yeah.
Over the course of this book, Scott murders 7 people.
No, defeats.
Sorry, he defeats. Sorry.
Yes.
Scott defeats 7 people. No, like, they don't come back or anything. They don't go anywhere else. Someone actually says at one point, "Oh, you made him explode by headbutting him." It's like, okay, so that person's dead.
Yeah.
Right? They're gone forever. No one seems at all bothered by the fact that Scott his let me allow me to grab that word before it slips out again. Mm-hmm. He defeats.
Thank you.
And I'm doing very heavy air quotes here,
yes,
everyone.
We can tell.
Defeats 7 people. Like, no one is disturbed by this at all?
No, it's fine. Yeah. It's a common thing.
Maybe
it's a Canada thing. Yeah.
It's a Canada thing.
They started it, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
You say Canada started it.
Yes.
No, I said the exes started it.
Oh.
Not Canada.
It's like, Canada, renowned for blowing people up and turning them into coins.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, then Scott and Ramona decide to become a couple, but Scott has to agree to defeat her 6 other evil exes. And when Scott tries to ask about Gideon, then Ramona's head starts to glow, which is a thing that happens in this series a few times. So yeah, that's the end of volume 1. So Logan, why don't you start? What did you think when you first read volume 1? And I guess on a reread too.
So I loved this when I first read it, but I haven't reread it up until this point.
Okay.
Reading the show.
How old were you, did you say, when you first read it?
I was all of about 18 or 19. Like, I just moved out of home to do a brief bit of study, and I don't know, I was in that weird in-between phase between, being a teenager and becoming an adult and all that kind of shit. So it really did resonate with me in that sense. But when I was younger, I don't think I realized quite how much of a douchebag Scott Pilgrim is. I mean, I was just like, oh, he's so wacky, such a silly Billy. But I mean, in the first volume alone, like defeating evil exes aside, he dates a high schooler and then basically cheats on her, or intends to cheat on her, with this girl who's been, rollerblading through his head in his dreams. Mm-hmm. And he's not, he's not brave enough to actually admit that he doesn't want to be with her and doesn't want to break her heart. So he just sort of delays talking to her.
He just kind of hopes the problem will go away by itself.
Yeah, which doesn't work in Toronto, apparently.
No, they have way too small and tight of a group of friends, and they all know each other, and every time they show up to anything, it's always the same group of people, which they kind of make a running joke out of a few of them. Like, there's a character, is it Jason, that he never remembers meeting, even though he's met him everywhere they go. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that Scott is just this kind of bumbling idiot, but everyone seems to just tolerate his bad behavior. Like, all of his friends are enabling him. Like, his friend Wallace just lets him live there in this crappy studio apartment, and Scott doesn't work and just
they share a futon.
Yes, they share a futon.
What does Scott do for money? Like, he doesn't have a job, and he's been unemployed at this point for a year.
He
what does he
bums off of Wallace the entire time.
I mean, Wallace has to buy him sushi, otherwise he'll die of starvation. So I think at this point, he's basically Wallace's pet.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Wallace seems to revel in that, honestly.
Wallace seems real into it. Wallace is into pet play. I will give my thoughts now since I am now dominating the mic space here. I did not read Scott Pilgrim when I was younger. I read Scott Pilgrim as a 25-year-old, having already gone through university and all that kind of stuff. Had we not been reviewing this for the show, I would have kind of seriously considered going on to the second volume. Like if I had paid cash money for the first volume, I don't know if I would have bought the second one in kind of a particular hurry, because Scott's very unpleasant. I don't like him at all at this point. He's 23 and he's dating a 17-year-old and doesn't find that weird at all. He is cheating on her. He is emotionally manipulative towards her. He immediately disregards her for the hottest, freshest piece of ass that comes into his frame of vision. And he's just generally not a pleasant character to read about. The stuff about the evil exes and, defeating them and like the kind of the aesthetic and style kind of surrounding that and even the subspace, as much as I joke about how unexplained it is kind of cool. And everything about the evil exes, very interesting and very cool. God, I hate Scott Pilgrim. At this point, I cannot stand him.
So here's a little story for you guys.
Okay.
I read volumes 1 and 2 probably, I was probably around that same age, 25, 26. And I actually was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And then the movie came out and I watched the movie and I was like, oh, the point is that he's an ass and that he learns his lesson in the end. So then I went back and reread it with that context.
Yeah.
And I was able to go, okay, but we know now that eventually he will become a better person. And knowing that is what made me go back and actually reread them and enjoy them. Because I had the same reaction initially where I'm like, man, I'm liking everything except the main character.
If you've been reading this issue by issue over 6 years, that would have been a really hard thing to, tag along with.
The particularly confusing thing for me is that, so I pick up volume 1. I've not seen the movie at any point here. And I promise my thoughts on the other 2 volumes will be shorter. I pick up the first volume. It says on the back, this book is a hoot, a wild, mad ride that left me wanting more. Ain't it cool news? Then the Washington Post said, a hilarious, idiosyncratic gem. And I was like, wait. It's got a movie as well. Oh my gosh. And then I'm reading it. I'm just like, do I have bad taste? Am I just not getting this? Like everyone's kind of everyone's really cool and interesting other than the main character. Why the fuck am I spending so much time with him?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Also, I tried to remember the era. This came out in 2004. So the biggest things in comics, that was when webcomics were really, really taken off, and penny arcade guys were becoming multimillionaires and all this crazy crap was happening. And this definitely feels of that era and of that genre of this could have easily been a webcomic that just happened to get super popular.
100%.
But he just happened to be published and it's a physical paperback. So that adds a little more legitimacy to it at the time and stuff. So it's very I can see this being a thing that would have been very popular concurrent with what was going on in webcomics at the time.
Yeah. Although one thing that, in its favor, one thing that did keep me, I at the time I picked it up, I think I had 3 or 4 volumes at least to work through. Mm-hmm. One thing that, kept me going with it, was the art is very good for black and white. It's, the way that he uses solid black is extremely good.
Yeah.
For sure. Shading. And it's also extremely, and I'm trying to think back to before the movie, but it's also extremely cinematic. And in a way, when I was rewatching the movie after having reread them, this is basically a storyboard for the movie with the way that it was,
for sure.
that it was shot. But we'll get into that later on. But, I think it's snappy, it moves along at a good pace. The supporting cast are all great.
Oh, yeah.
It's just,
I love all them.
Scott Pilgrim fucking sucks.
Yes.
That's the point.
As you were going through the recap and you're like Wallace Wells, Stephen Stills, Kim Pine, I was like, oh man, I really like all those characters. I really enjoy them. And then it's like Scott Pilgrim. I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
The
turns out that's kind of the reaction that Brian Lee O'Malley wanted you to have to his behavior, though.
That manipulative bastard.
Yeah. It's like he knew what he was doing.
How dare he get the reaction he wanted?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I guess it's not the reaction, or it's not the endearing main character you expect from this hyped up story. Like, I don't expect the character to be, it's like the problem I had when I first tried to get into Game of Thrones. Like, Brittany had read the first several books and then the show started coming out, so she wanted to watch it. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a chance. And I almost had to stop after the first couple episodes because there was no good guy. Like, initially, like you eventually were like, oh, Ned Stark's cool, but then we all know what happens there. So it's like, it was a hard nut for me to crack to get into that one.
It was a hard nut for me to bust.
I did not say that.
As soon as you said it, I was just like, yeah,
because I was brave.
I mean, season 1, there's a lot of stuff to have a hard nut about.
All right.
Anyway, so I'm just going to take us straight into Volume 2.
Thank you. Please do.
Put this behind. So, Volume 2, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is also the title of the film.
Hey.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World opens with a flashback to 7 years before the series begins. And this particular piece is also what Scott Pilgrim versus the animation told the story of as well. Scott and his friend Lisa Miller, high school students in Northern Ontario, want to start a band, but they need a drummer. This problem appears to be solved when Scott notices his classmate Kim's ability to play drums. When Scott finds out that Kim has been kidnapped by students from a rival school, he defeats the kidnappers, including the leader, Simon Lee, by kicking him off the roof and rescues her. She also then says that she wants to date Scott, and they kiss.
Immediately make out.
Kim joins Scott and Lisa's band and dates Scott until they break up when he moves to Toronto. In the present, Wallace tells Scott that actor and professional skateboarder Lucas Lee, Ramona's second evil ex-boyfriend, is filming a new movie in Toronto. Scott awkwardly breaks up with Knives after Wallace threatens to tell Ramona about her. Scott then meets Lucas at his filming location, where Lucas beats Scott up and tells him about the League of Ramona's evil exes who have organized themselves to come after Scott. Scott defeats Lucas by goading him into skateboarding down a dangerous set of rails, where he ends up going too fast to live and bursting into coins upon landing. Having discovered that Ramona is dating Scott, a furious Knives gives herself a hipster makeover by dyeing her forelock and attacks Ramona at the library. Knives confirms that Scott was cheating on her and Ramona simultaneously and takes off. Meanwhile, Scott gets a call from Envy Adams, another of his ex-girlfriends, who asks him to open for her band, The Clash at Demon Head, that weekend. Speaking with Envy reopens Scott's unresolved issues about their breakup. Nevertheless, Sex Bombs show up to see Envy's band. The book ends with an epic opening by The Clash at Demon Head, where Ramona identifies the band's bassist as her third evil ex-boyfriend, Todd Ingram. So what do you guys think of that stuff?
Hey, what do you say? On there?
That's a lot. I did like how Wallace forces Scott to break up with Knives.
Yes,
because
Wallace is good.
You need to break up with your fake high school girlfriend.
Yes,
oh my God.
That was very good of him. I also did like the River City Ransom intro of them going to a rival high school and beating the crap out of all the other kids. I know that was also the inspiration for everyone turning into coins when they're defeated. So that's another deep cut. As is goddamn Clash at Demon Head is a NES game that's very weird, but apparently he enjoyed, like Brian Lee O'Malley enjoyed, and so he had to put that name in there. So
I think what you meant to call it was Dengeki Big Bang.
Sure.
Yeah. Isn't that what Mario 2 was originally called?
Yeah. That's Mario's dad's name.
So the flashback that starts this whole volume, isn't that kind of fucked up? Was it just me?
It's like, weird.
Very.
Like, it goes to a rival high school. Like, at some point, it just completely derails into fantasy. And
this is all a lie that Scott has constructed in his head, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Like, I feel like we are looking at a metaphorical, like, the whole comic is a metaphorical look at the way Scott Pilgrim perceives things to make himself a hero.
Yes.
100%.
When he's actually a complete douchebag. And, like, in one of the last volumes, you kind of see that when, like, someone says, you know, like, don't you remember? And he flashes back and it's just, like, a little, like, crayon drawing of whatever he remembers.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he goes to a rival high school where this guy, Simon Lee, has got Kim chained up to a wall.
Yeah.
And then, like, they have this epic fight with incredible shading and, you know, silhouette work and that kind of thing. And, like, it's all amazing and he's a hero and all that kind of shit. But, like, it's so divorced from reality.
Yeah.
And then we sort of crash back to, you know, Ramona interrupts his dream and then we're back to reality, or as close as we'll get to it through his lens of life. And, like, I feel like the only peak that we actually get of reality is, you know, the comments that people make, like Kim just calling him the scum of the earth. And, you know, the few comments that actually sort of penetrate his ego. So, yeah, it's fascinating to kind of, I would love a comic of just everyone else's perspective on the chain of events.
Yeah. Of Scott just bumbling around being so fucking lame all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I say I laughed a lot when Lucas Lee is going down the rail and it says like speed, you know, 20Ks, 40Ks, 90Ks, too fast to live, and he just explodes. Like he just catches fire and explodes. For some reason, just like the ridiculousness of, because Scott cannot beat him. So Lucas is too tough for Scott to like actually fight in any way. And so Scott's like, oh, I bet you can't do a grind down this massive like rail of like, you know, 200 stairs.
Right. Because before he was an actor, they point out he was a skater. So he's like, well, clearly you lost it because all you care about is your acting career now.
Yeah. And he's like, I'll show you. And then he dies. Scott tricks a man into killing himself.
He dies in a horrific skateboarding accident.
Yeah. That's a bad way to go.
Of coins.
Also, one thing that I noticed just flicking through this as we're talking about it, when Wallace has made a file for Scott about Lucas Lee, you know, his hetero crush. He's watching movies, Lucas Lee movies, and Ramona's there on their awkward as fuck date, where they eat a lot of garlic bread. They're watching a Lucas Lee movie and her hair starts glowing. And so I didn't really pay that much attention to it on the first read through, but it's kind of peppered throughout. It's interesting though. I still don't know if it actually ties together or if it's just trying to be more introspective than it actually is. I don't know. It's kind of,
Yeah, no, I say like at this point I was a little more kind of on board with the whole sort of thing because I was, especially with Wallace. I feel like Wallace is probably one of the most important characters in the story in that like the band tolerates Scott's shittiness and his sister kind of gives him crap, but Wallace doesn't let him get away with anything. Yeah. And when he's like, you got to tell Ramona about Knives and you got to break up with Knives and you got to like resolve the situation. And Scott's like, I'm a whiny piss baby and I don't want to. Wallace is like, okay, well, I'm going to tell Ramona and I'm going to make this problem resolve for you. Like, I'm not just going to take it. Like, I'm not going to enable you like everybody else. And so that was kind of like, for me, it was like, oh, so like Scott is shitty. Cool. It's not just me. I'm not the only one getting this here. So
Wallace is the one that actually calls him on his crap and tries to make him a better person.
Wallace is his best friend. Wallace.
Oh,
yeah.
Also, that just reminded me how like anywhere he goes where his friends work, they're always like, "Oh, good, you're here." Because he's always like asking for free stuff, or like Kim works at a video store and he's like, "Oh, I have a big list of stuff to rent," and she's like, "You guys have a universal ban on your account." It's like, why? And she looks it up, and the computer shows that they returned the Land Before Time 4, which is quaint considering there's like 18 of those now. 36 weeks late. He claims that mice hid the video somewhere in his apartment. Also claims he rented it as a joke.
That's one of my favorite little details that's hidden in there. I
just love how they put that detail in, like his excuse for why he didn't return it is part of his like ban.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few like non sequitur things like that. Like when in the first volume he goes with Wallace to meet Knives outside of school, and oh no, it wasn't that. Later on, when he's busting away from Wallace, at some point he's yelling a whole bunch of insults at him, and the speech bubbles are just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. You can actually read them if you sort of squint and look at them closely enough. My other favorite non sequitur moment is Stephen Stills teaches us how to make vegan shepherd's pie.
Yes.
Yeah.
For like 5 pages.
Yeah. It was like, he looks at the, camera, so to speak, and he's like, everybody else can learn too. Oh, wink. Yeah. And then you get like 5 pages of recipe, and it's very odd.
Yeah.
Very,
hey kids,
very odd.
Now you can cook along at home and impress your vegan relatives. If you're under 23, ask a grown-up to help out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I have to say I much preferred this volume to the first one.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. There, you get more personality. You kind of get how everyone else perceives Scott as well. Which is good to see. That's, like you said, it's justification for, not like all his other friends are calling him on stuff, or not. They do put up with it more than, you'd like them to, but at the same time, everyone's probably had a person they've known forever that they are just like, I guess you're part of our group still. But it's 2018. You don't need to let that person be part of your group. Come on. I mean, this was 2004. It was a different time, I guess.
There were less friends to go around.
Yeah.
Unless life around them is actually like a video game and they're, headbutting guys into coins. That, that has some entertainment value, but
sure, I
wouldn't invest too much in their friendship.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like if I knew that there was a group going around headbutting people to death and turning them into money, I'd be like, no, actually, I'm good. I don't want to be friends with those guys. I'm good out here doing literally anything else.
All right, when you say it like that.
Yeah, they also set up the Clash at Demon Head as, Scott's big X, and of course Knives is obsessed with that band, and
of course.
That's also when she's there's I thought pretty funny scene where he's like trying to delay her or change the subject so she won't say that she loves him. And then when she does say the word love, it comes out as like this giant cloud that's like pushing him over. And it just shows like his fear of any kind of commitment to any person is like very real. And as it progresses, we'll see is very core to one of the reasons he's such a terrible, terrible person is because in things get difficult, Scott runs away. That's kind of a running theme throughout the
Scott
books.
runs away.
So with that said, you want to take volume 3 for us there, Logan?
Yeah, I was just going to say before we do that,
sure.
The Knives and Ramona fight is entertaining as hell.
Oh, yeah.
But also just completely superfluous.
Mm-hmm. I think he just wanted an excuse to draw a cool action sequence, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I love that she throws a sword at Ramona and it's like, here's something to remember me by. And it's got a note on it. And then she opens it up and it says, you're ugly and I hate you.
Yes.
Nice
and Knives constantly calls Ramona fat all the time.
Yeah.
Just like when she's dyeing her hair, she's like, I think she says like 4 times and her friend is like, I think you mentioned she was fat.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
I feel really bad for her friend as well.
Yeah, the shit she has to put up with. Oh, man.
Yeah, right, I mean, Scott's bad influence is actually making her a worse person, is what we're seeing there.
Yes.
Well, like Wallace said right at the beginning, you're too good for him. Run.
Yes.
Yes, he does. Wallace is right.
Yeah. All right, so Volume 3, Scott Pilgrim and the Infinite Sadness, which is a big mood.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof.
So, the Infinite Sadness continues the night that the Clash at Demon Head performs. After the venue clears out, Envy invites Scott and his friends backstage. Disgusted by Envy's new personality, Scott blames Todd for changing her and tries to attack him, but is stopped by Todd's psychic vegan powers.
Sorry, okay. Can we just briefly pause here?
Yeah.
What the hell? I mean, subspace, sure. This came out of nowhere.
But, Kieran, being vegan just makes you better than other people.
Mm-hmm. I like how he had a recipe for vegan food, and then now this volume he's like, aren't vegans crappy people? Like, don't you hate those guys?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's supposed to be Scott's perspective that vegans are asses.
That's true.
Because they're trying to be better than him. Maybe this is his warped reality once again.
I was just looking it up. I think Brian Lee O'Malley might be vegan, but I don't.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm like, that might be because he is vegan. I don't know.
Anyway, doesn't matter. It's a good bit. So a flashback reveals that Envy, formerly known as Natalie V. Adams, CNV, was a mousy girl who gradually bloomed into a confident musical talent. She broke up with Scott once their band started to get noticed. A contest is set up by Envy, pitting Scott and Todd against each other in a landmark discount store, Honest Ed's. Todd's psychic powers end up destroying the store in a bout of existential dread. Scott and Ramona decide to blow off the next battle. 2 days later, it's revealed Todd, who once punched a hole in the moon for Envy, is cheating on her with the band's drummer, Lynette. When Envy discovers this, and the fact that Todd had punched a hole in the moon for Ramona first, Todd strikes her with his powers, shocking everyone. Todd and Scott have a battle, which Todd almost wins until the vegan police show up and strip him of his powers for violating his vegan diet by eating gelato and a chicken parmesan. Scott headbutts the powerless Todd, who is reduced to a pile of coins.
Unto death.
Yeah.
Unto death. He murders this man.
Headbutts him to death. Or to coins. He defeats him. He receives an extra life in the process. Envy goes solo and leaps down, showing some regret at the bitchy diva she's become, but leaving her standing with Scott unresolved and him pining for some closure. Scott and Ramona look forward to the future.
So, Jonah, what did you think of this one?
This one on a reread, I was actually looking forward to because I knew this is one of the scenes I really dig in the movie is how ridiculous this whole thing is. And the fact that they got Superman to play Superman, essentially.
Yeah. That's good shit.
Is very good. So, I actually was looking forward to this volume a lot and I did enjoy it. I liked how, especially knowing like Scott's kind of warped perspective on things, how we knew he was going to get his ass kicked, which is, kind of nice to see because he deserves it sometimes. There's also the scene, which I had kind of forgotten about, where the drummer from the other band, who has a cyborg arm, which I totally had forgotten about. Because I do not think that's in the movie, which is, she punches the color out of Knives' hair, like since she dyed her hair. she punches her so hard that the color comes out of her hair, which I thought was pretty amusing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting going back, knowing how things turn out and seeing Scott's perspective on Envy in these earlier volumes and how she's like, oh, she became this conceited person who just wanted to be famous. And it's like, well, I mean, there was more going on there, Scott. You just didn't see it, buddy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, again, the side characters kept this one really interesting, just kind of seeing like the other people interacting and the few that are obsessed with Envy. But then there's, because he has like friends that are kind of not Scott's friends. They're like friends of friends, but they're trying to get on her good side, but they only get to go hang out because Scott's there and she invited them back. So he's there. And then, yeah, it's kind of cool to see just the interplay of all the characters. I think that was done incredibly well in this volume. And go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that kind of interplay in that backstage scene is probably one of my favorite parts of like this whole kind of volume. Is that just because like I'm kind of not really warming to Scott, but I'm kind of beginning to understand like his role at this point. But all of the other side characters have like this are really good. Like, I really enjoy the writing for all the other characters, and their kind of interplay and conversations is really, really good. And I think Envy is a great character. I think she's really awesome. And so her basically like dunking on all the other characters and all the other characters kind of taking it and just like being around this weirdness is very awesome. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And there was some good fights in this one too. Ramona and Envy fight a little bit in this one. Knives tries to fight, but gets immediately like hit into a wall. Like she gets a one punch defeated in that. So, she tried. And we also get to see Kim, like she keeps secreting away, and it turns out it's because she was making this awesome gothic Lolita dress for their performance. So you're like, oh, Kim is an awesome character and continues to be cool. So, I want to see more of her in this book, but
Kim is awesome.
Yeah. She's always just kind of on the side of things, it seems like, but, she has a much, broader, like spectrum of interests and things that we just barely get a glimpse into, but it just made that character more endearing to find out she is apparently awesome at making costumes.
Well, yeah, like we just get Scott's perspective of her making, snide comments at his expense, but
sure.
Like, really, she does care for him, or, at least cared for him back in high school, and then sort of now realizes what a dick he is. But, she's still sort of invested in him, so she'll happily just call him on his shit. Which makes her one of my favorite characters in the whole thing.
Yeah. So, what did you guys think of the confrontation with Scott and Todd?
Loved it. Like, the whole vegan powers thing is still one of my favorite things about the whole story. And just how ridiculous it is, and it comes and goes so quickly. And we got vegan police from this comic, so that's a gift unto the world.
Yeah.
Like the way that it's animated as well, like, the first confrontation with Matthew Patel, Matthew Patel, is so anime, but then it sort of just keeps getting more and more anime as it goes along. Mm-hmm. And I love that. It just gets ridiculous and mashes things together. And yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was actually looking right before we started recording it, see like some of his influences on this. And he had said like there wasn't a lot of anime and manga type stuff available to him when he first started doing it. So one of his big influences was actually Ranma 1/2, which that has a lot of weird battles and stuff in it too. Like people use the kung fu, but it's like, I'm the kung fu master of ramen noodles or something, like some weird random thing that makes no sense if you've ever seen Ranma or read it. So I can definitely see now that I know that, I'm like, oh, okay, so having these like powers from food or whatever random reason they have powers kind of tracks if that was one of his early influences. And also that book is actually a surprisingly good action like manga. It's just random fights because why not? Because the main characters' dads are both like karate masters and they're betrothed,
Yeah.
I also love the panel in that fight at the very end with the vegan police where Todd is like, I can dodge this. And then it just says, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
I love the onomatopoeia that Brian Lee O'Malley uses throughout the whole book. All the volumes, like in that frame that you're talking about, the de-veganizing ray. I can dodge this, zoom, dodge, but he couldn't. Like it's just his choices are all so crazy, and the lettering for them makes the action really sort of feel visceral.
Yeah, it's very comic booky.
Yes,
but in like a really good classic kind of way.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's a case for why comic books need really good letterers.
Yeah. I mean, during the base battle, we've got, Todd, hitting Scott with a jolt of bass music, and then, Scott skids across the floor, which and then whomp as he hits a wall. Like, that is just so on point. I love it.
Yeah. It's well done because you don't, in the moment, you're not noticing it because it's not standing out like in a bad way.
Yeah. But it definitely incredibly adds a lot to it.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this one before we wrap this episode, guys?
I think it's interesting seeing the fractures beginning in Scott and Ramona's relationship. That, like, you can kind of see that maybe at the beginning it was just based on infatuation. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like, I think rereading this, I think that maybe after Gideon, Ramona was just looking for someone who liked her, you know, because it says, like, later on that she was in love with him and he was like, you know, sort of like didn't really give her the time of day. And so that kind of explains why she would date such a fucking loser. Yeah.
Tell us what you really think, though.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it has happened. Like, she does say a few times, like, when he's like, why are you even dating me? And she's like, because you're nice to me. It's like, that is all she was looking for, was someone that was nice.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, this is simple, you know, like, I needed this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is what Scott liked about the Knives Chow situation. He said, interesting.
Interesting. No parallels there.
Yeah.
No, I don't see any foreshadowing at all.
Okay, well, that's going to take us to the end of part 1 of our review of Scott Pilgrim. Thank you for joining us, Logan. Why don't you tell us where people can find you online?
So online, I won't give you my home address.
No, don't do that.
Online, you can find me on Twitter at explogan42. That's EXPLOGAN before 2. And I also run a podcast, which has sort of been on hiatus for a while, but it's coming back, called Oasis of Optimism. And I've had Jonah as a guest on that show.
Yeah.
And which still continues to be, like, the most popular episode, by the way. So, yeah. But basically it's just a healthy dose of positivity in the middle of the week or whenever I get around to releasing it.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I just kind of want to brighten everyone's day when you listen to it.
I think I mentioned to you many times that first episode happened to drop when I was having a very bad day, and it actually was incredibly helpful. So it did its job from the get-go.
Well, that's still, like, a massive motivator. So, yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for coming on. It was, good fun. So hopefully
it was good. I got to talk about stationery. Like, where else would I get to do that?
Hell yeah. And it was good. I actually bought a journal. I didn't use it, but, you know, I bought one.
That's step 1. I have so many of those laying around. I actually just started using my moleskin that I bought, this fancy moleskin, when my therapist said, you should start journaling again. And I did like 1 page, and then it sat there, and then I got a Hobonichi again and started using that. So I now use it for comic book notes for this specific show. Inks and show. This very show. So, Kieran, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Mr.K_Bennett. You can also check out my Dungeons and Dragons podcast for Crits and Giggles, which is at 4CNG Podcast on Twitter. Jonah, where can people find you on the net? You can find me on Twitter at Spambot, and I have been streaming on our Twitch channel. We have a twitch.tv/inksandissues, and I recently bought WWE 2K19, and even though I'm not a huge wrestling guy, those games are pretty fun. So what I did was I used a face scanning technology and built a Kieran and a Jonah, and we are a tag team called Inks and Issues, and you can download us. Just search for #podcast, because for some reason their search thing for downloads in that game is hashtags. I don't know why. Interesting. But anyway, you can search for podcasts or Geekly Inc. I put us like you can add 3, and then I also just put Inks and Issues like as one word. So if you want to battle as us, I do need to tweak something, because I realized today neither of us have any garfs on our person, so I'm gonna have to adjust that. Fuck? I've been streaming the story mode in that, and then posting the video afterward onto our YouTube channel, because I think because we're not an affiliate or anything, they don't hold our videos for more than like a month or something. So, yeah. So YouTube's a good way to archive them. Anyway, so that's what I've been up to when I'm supposed to be doing other things.
If I get that game and I download Inks and Issues, the tag team wrestling team, and the Jonah in that tag team wrestling team doesn't have a massive chest tattoo of an orange cat, I'm going to be very disappointed.
I am wearing a logo tee of Inks and Issues, so
can you put the logo in there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can
Hell yeah.
Yeah, you can just upload artwork to their servers and then download it. There's some amazing community stuff that people have made. Like there's any like DC Marvel character you can probably find someone has made. It's pretty new still, so you might have to give it a few months to find some like deep cuts. I know the last edition I even found, well, like the last year's edition, I even found a Moon Knight that was incredibly well done. This year I've already found like a Spider-Man. The match I posted of me and Kieran, we get stomped by Batman and Robin. The guy who made the Robin actually reached out to me on the YouTube comments and was like, hey, that was my Robin. And he's like, you should check out my other stuff. So I did. And he had a whole bunch of other cool DC characters. So I downloaded a bunch of his stuff.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, it's fun times. So yeah, I'm doing lunchtime streams. I'm making my way through the career mode because it's kind of a weird mishmash of wrestling and RPG and visual novel in the career mode, because there's like dialogue tree things, but then there's also like a tech tree for your stats. It's very weird.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. You're actually selling me on this, so interesting.
Wait for a sale. Usually a few months in, those games have a massive price drop.
So, oh, yeah.
Need more mutants, metahumans, and monsters in your life? Then check out these other Geekly Inc. shows like Transformation Sequence, Cthulhu and Friends, and Drunks and Dragons. Help us make the show the best that it can be by supporting us at patreon.com/inksandissues, where you can get bonus content, early access to episodes, and can even vote on comics for us to review. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review to help us spread the word. Interact with us on Twitter at inksandissues or on Twitch at twitch.tv/inksandissues. Now do yourself a favor and go read some gosh dang comics. Anyway, all right. But that's it for me. Check us out next week when we will cover part 2 of Scott Pilgrim. Goodbye.
Bye. Love you.
So, Kieran, you have some fun facts for us.
I do, but Logan's about to commit sound crimes.
No!
So I just need to rotate my mic a bit.
That's fine.
Yes. It's an edit point for
Yes.
Yeah.
helping you out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the particularly confusing thing for me...
Sound crimes!
I'm sorry, because they're all sitting here on this piano, they just fell off.
Okay.
Scott then meets Lucas at his filming location, where Lucas beats Scott up and tells him about... Oh, my... Excuse me.
My goodness.
I'm just going to start that whole sentence again. My gosh.